I'm going to walk you through the steps of how to print a digital PDF pattern at home. And it's one of those things where if you've never done it before, it might seem kind of like confusing or complicated. And then once you know how to do it, it's super easy. The format is going to be the same for pretty much any pattern you buy online. But for today, I'm going to be using one of my patterns as an example. So once you've purchased the pattern and downloaded all the files, you will open it up and see that you have 4 files, one of which is the instruction booklet. And then you have 3 different options for how you want to get the actual pattern pieces. Option number 1 is to print them at home on like standard printer paper, which is what we're going to be doing today. The second printing option is large format, which is a giant piece of paper formatted for A0 size paper, which is like 33 by 46 inches about. It's just like a standard paper size that any copy shop would know. So you can send that file to a copy shop, or my favorite way to print large format, there's a website called PDF Plotting that I've used 100 times, not 100, but a lot. And it's definitely cheaper than like printing locally, but you just have to wait for it to be shipped. And then the last option is to use a projector, which is definitely less common. I've actually never used a projector for sewing, but I have friends who do and they love it. So there is a projector file included if that's something you're interested in looking into. I'm first going to show you how to print your file, all of the printer settings you need to know, and then I'm going to show you how to tile together all the papers to get your pattern. We are going to print today from Adobe Acrobat, which is just a PDF viewing software that's free. You can use that, you can use your browser to print, you can print from anything. We're just using Adobe today because there is a layers function in there that is extremely helpful, and I'm going to show you how to use it. Essentially, within all the pattern files, there are layers that are connected to each individual size. So you can turn off all the layers except for yours, so you only see your size on the page, which is very helpful for many reasons. But for this pattern in particular, there are a lot of like little pattern markings like notches and things like that, that when all of the sizes are visible can get kind of muddied up. But if you turn all the other layers off and only see your size, it makes cutting way easier. Okay, here we go. All right, so here you can see the 4 files that we had talked about, the instructions, and then the 3 printing and projector options. We are going to go ahead and open the print at home file. I'm going to quickly change it to the 2-page view just because I think you can see things a little better that way. So what we're going to do first in Adobe is we're going to go over here to this layers icon. And here you can see these are all the different sizes. So we are going to turn off all sizes but size 8, which is the size that I'm printing today. And you can see as I'm unclicking them, you can see all of the different lines disappearing except for that one. We do not want to turn off labels or the do not unlock. That will turn off the labels and things like page numbers and things that you need. So leave those 2 on and then choose whatever size you have. And that is your layers. Then we're going to go over here to the print icon, click on that. And this part is very important. You need to make sure that your scale is either actual size or 100%. I like to put it on 100%. It just gives me peace of mind. And that will make sure that your pattern is sized correctly so that your pattern pieces won't be too big or too small. One other tip, it's always a good idea to print a test page first. So we are going to print just page 1 to make sure that everything is correct. So here's that tester page, and the reason I want to test this first is to measure these test squares to make sure that the scale is correct for your printer. So I'm just going to take my tape measure, make sure that one side of this measures 2 inches, which it does, and so now I know that I can print the rest of my pattern. All right, now that we have all the papers cut, I am going to show you how to tile them together, which essentially is just piecing all the papers together and taping them, but I will show you a few tips and tricks of how I do things. First of which is that I always assemble my patterns on a cutting mat just because I find the grid to be helpful. That's definitely not necessary, just something that I find useful. Another thing that I do is with the margins, so you can see we're going to need to line up these 2 shapes so that they come together as a diamond. A lot of people cut the margins off. I find that that just takes a lot of time, and so what I end up doing is I fold the margins under, something like this, so that they come together without having to cut. So First up, before I tape my first pieces together, I want to note that as I'm going to be keeping my eye out for papers that don't have any pattern pieces on them. So for example, page 1 has the tester squares, it has the body measurements on it, and it has the key on it. But because I layered my sizes and I can only see the dashed line for size 8, there's no actual pattern pieces on page 1. So because of that, I'm going to set page 1 aside and I am not going to tape that together to all the rest of the pages. Okay, so starting off with pages 2 and 3, these are the first ones we're going to tape together. So I am going to fold down the edge of page 3, and you can see there's a border on the side of every page that you can fold along. So fold along that border as best you can, and then when you flip it over, you'll see that you can line up that diamond shape perfectly. I do try to use as little tape as possible. So I'll tape a lot of times up to the edge of the pattern pieces. So you can see there's a curve here, and then up to the edge of this one, I'll tape a little bit there as well. Great, okay, those are the first pages we've taped together. We'll cruise along here with page 4. Now that we have a few pages together, I'm going to pick up my pace, go a little bit faster, but one thing to keep in mind is that this pattern is tiled out with 5 in a row. So it will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then at 6, it will start over at the next row, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then go to the next row. So keep that in mind, and the pattern files do have a little map of what the pattern looks like all assembled, so that you can kind of reference that as you're taping together your pattern. So as you get to the second row, when you're folding, you'll see that I folded this long edge like I did with all the ones on the top, but then I'm also going to fold along the top edge. So 2 of the edges are folded and 2 of them I leave flat. Then you can go ahead and you're gonna line up the diamond shape on the top and then also the diamond shape on the side here. And we'll make sure that both of those are aligned and then continue going from there. One other tip, you'll see that there's a big blank space in here between these 2 pattern pieces. You still want to tape them together, tape the pages together, but I did space my tape intentionally so that I just put a little piece here to attach it, and then the tape that I put here, I put on the actual pattern piece and not in the blank space. You can put tape in the blank space, I just find it's not necessary and a little bit wasteful, but you definitely want to be taping on the actual pattern pieces. I also find that it's really helpful to make sure you're taping down these places where 4 pages intersect if they touch on a pattern piece. So for example, here this is blank space, so I don't really need to tape that corner down, but since this one is on a pattern piece, I want to make sure to tape it so that that doesn't get all pulled apart after we cut the pattern. Okay, all my pattern pieces have been cut, and this is what they look like. They all have like a letter associated with them. There's pattern markings on them. I've been really careful to cut them not sloppy to the best of my abilities. And double check as you cut if there are any small pieces on your pattern, like this, for example. Double check before you recycle all your paper that you didn't miss any little pattern pieces, because it's a pain to have to go back later and print out any pieces that you missed. So once everything has been printed, you are good to go and ready to sew your pattern.